Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. Ooh boy, I am getting hammered by all this news, and I apologize for not splitting it up appropriately to keep the daily episodes. I have trouble stopping short when there's still more to get through. Bit of a perfectionist thing, I guess. But I skipped a night of sleep, and here we are. And there's a lot to get through, so let's hit it. In police brutality news, which has depressingly become a regular section, the entire Buffalo Police Department emergency response team has resigned from the team, a total of 57 officers. I know, finally! We've been waiting for the good cops to speak out against the immoral use of force in a meaningful way, and they finally. Wait, what's that? They aren't protesting the treatment of citizens? They're protesting the two officers getting suspended without pay for shoving the old man onto the pavement and cracking his skull? I see. Of course they are. Remember what I said about losing faith that most of the cops are good? Yeah, having the entire team rally around the criminals in their midst isn't helping my opinion of them. This is pretty much blowing my mind. The officers are still employed, just not on emergency response. I suppose I thank them for that at least. I'd love it if the city helped them a little further by firing them all. You could probably hire the looters and have a less crooked force. This is, of course, only one of many newly surfaced brutality incidents. Sadly, there are too many to cover for a podcast this length, so I'll just direct you to the growing list being tracked on a Google spreadsheet in the links below. Just as bad, Trump, Fox News, and other right-wing influencers are leaning heavily into peddling fake rumors about Antifa, stoking made-up conflict, and painting the protesters as Antifa-led left-wing propaganda, apparently based on a fake Antifa Twitter account, which posted that Antifa was going to loot the suburbs. It got so bad that the police in Iowa, Oregon, and Chicago were taking seriously rumors of thousands of Antifa looters being bussed in. Bussed in. Thousands of them. Yeah, let that sink in. Chicago shut down roads and sent a helicopter to investigate. What world are we living in? Twitter and even Facebook have blocked it and labeled it as disinformation, but it hasn't stopped the rumor spreading, and it certainly hasn't stopped Trump spreading it. He's taking full advantage to create a new divide among the people that he can play off of to rally his base. He's trying to get the FBI to officially label Antifa a terrorist organization, and according to investigative reporter for Univision, Jose Pagliera, he's now got the FBI interrogating arrested protesters for, quote, anti-fascist sentiments or connections to Antifa, end quote. So don't make the mistake of saying you're not a fan of fascism, or you might get labeled a terrorist. Just saying this to remind myself, this is America. It hasn't all been bad, of course. Peaceful protests continue across the country with little sign of diminishment. In many cases, the size of the protesters has grown. On Thursday, for example, well over 5,000 protesters marched across the Brooklyn Bridge following a memorial for George Floyd in New York City. Pretty crazy seeing the entire length of the bridge covered in people. House Democrats have drafted a police reform bill that they plan to introduce Monday, drafted by members of the Congressional Black Caucus. It will aim to address excessive use of force, qualified immunity, and racial profiling, according to Pelosi. Qualified immunity is a law that makes it harder for victims and their families to sue police officers for injustices. Mike Breuer had a virtual town hall meeting. What he also had was a petition for the most radical response to social justice I've heard. Mike proposes the creation of a criminal justice overhaul commission comprised of public defenders, civil rights lawyers, community activists, mental health experts, LGBTQ, economists, people with disabilities, low-income people of color, public housing experts, members of every federally recognized minority race, including First Nations and Native Americans, and experts in policing, trial, procedure, sentencing, incarceration, parole, and juvenile justice, all of whom will be people of color. The commission will compose a list of reforms to attempt to eliminate police brutality and racial bias from the justice system. The kicker is, Congress will have to agree to the reforms being passed beforehand. If Congress wants to block any of the commission's policies, they will have to vote that policy down separately. As Mike puts it, the dysfunctions of the legislative system will, for once, fall on the oppressors rather than the oppressed. Dude's got balls. Now, do I think that he has any chance of passing it? No. Did I sign it anyway? You betcha. Link below. While the employment numbers this week came back better than people were expecting, a lot of inaccuracies have been brought up around the numbers. But one number that is highly concerning, brought up by our CEO friend Dan Price, is that of families who were earning $36,000 a year or less, 95% of them have lost income during this crisis. 95%. And the stock market is soaring, and the government is bailing out corporations and giving tax breaks to the wealthy. The rich are only getting richer. This is hammering the nail of inequality so much deeper into the corpse of the American dream. So while there's never been a greater need for UBI, we now have some Republican senators pointing to the new job numbers and saying there's no need for further stimulus. 13% headline unemployment isn't fooling anyone. There's around 53 million total filed for UI right now, which is close to half the previously participating workforce. There is desperate need. Fortunately, Scott's coming to the rescue with his recorded 3-minute presentation for Congress, which you can view at the link below. He went with the need for customers, the monopoly argument, the poor outlook of the economy, how reopening alone will not fix it, why UBI is better than some congressional programs, like UI and hazard pay, and some other benefits of UBI. Pretty good stuff. If you want to record your own message for Congress, you can apply at testifyforubi.com. Scott also wrote a brief article on the intersection between race and economics, and how UBI is a greater advancement in racial justice than people assume. Here's an excerpt of the fun part. Quote, UBI is about so much more than money. It means the power to refuse being subordinate, to refuse to work for racists or buy from racists. It's the ability to donate to black candidates seeking local and national office. UBI is the time to run for office or to volunteer to help others run for office. It's the ability to pay for legal defense and lawsuits and to avoid being jailed for lack of money. It's the power to strike, the capital to start and support black-owned businesses, and to build wealth. Economic justice requires UBI because nothing else is conditional, universal access to resources that treat everyone equally. A floor underneath us all is the act of repossession and the return of natural inheritance, and thus the return of power. UBI is the breaking of chains. End quote. I've actually been thinking for the last couple days that while I initially prioritized democracy dollars and star voting as the most important reforms to restore democracy for the people, UBI might be equally important because it can give people the gift of time. Think about the reaction to deaths such as Floyd's over the years. He's not the first to cause outrage. He's certainly the most extreme example of blatant murder, but not to the extent that it explains the difference in reaction between the others and now. So what changed? Well, people are unemployed. Lots of people. They have time to be aware of current events, and they have the mental bandwidth to care about it, since they're not consumed with the rat race, and they have time to protest. While I always knew that UBI would be a significant boon to civic engagement, after seeing the movement born out of Floyd's death, I think I may have underestimated it. Seriously, UBI, is there anything you can't do? Stop showing off. Of course, the 4-day work week that Yang has been pushing lately would also have a huge impact. And he supports both. Dang, Yang, stop showing off. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that most of our listeners are not fans of Lindsey Graham, especially now that he's actively opposing UBI, even as a temporary measure. Well, if that's you, I have good news. His challenger, Jamie Harrison, is tied 42-42 in their race. which means he could very much use a bit of volunteer or donor support to give him the edge. Humanity Forward has come out with 2 more official endorsements. The first is for Nate McMurray, running for Congress in New York. I can't really say why, as the only policy he has on his website is Medicare for All. Maybe that's enough, or more likely, HF knows more than I do. He came within 0.3% of winning in 2018. 0.3%. So he's definitely got a shot. The second candidate is Jeremy Cooney, running for state senate. He has pledged to support UBI and also supports legalizing marijuana and some other policies that do not directly intersect with Yang's. If he's made it this far with that last name, he's a trooper. Padgett interviewed Jermaine Johnson on his personal reaction to Floyd, what he hopes for the future, and why South Carolina should vote for him on Tuesday. Jermaine said that his race is going well, and I shouldn't have to say how great it would be to have this paragon of Humanity First in office. If you can help volunteer or donate to push him over the top, gang, it's well worth it. Likewise, Matt interviewed Jen Perelman, another potential winner, on the state of her race against incumbent Wasserman. The Melanated Council of Yang got together for another discussion on race yesterday, this time exploring the notion of how a person becomes racist. Pretty fascinating topic. Yang was interviewed by Xander Schultz on his podcast regarding UBI. Yang also, of course, had Bakari Sellers on Yang Speaks to talk about police brutality and racism. It was a productive discussion on policy. Yang Gang Book Club and the Melanated Council of Yang are coming together on a live stream today to talk favorite Black authors and books. Scott and Carl Witterquist participated in a discussion of international stimulus efforts, particularly in regards to basic income. Finally, I'll let Yang play us out after the reminders with his piano rendition of a familiar tune. Enjoy. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Sign Mike's petition, check out Nate and Jeremy, help Harrison and Johnson win their races, watch the anti-fascism video, help spread the word on coordinating with protesters to give the movement clear policy goals. If you're going out to protest, wear protection, especially on your eyes, head, and throat. If you get arrested while protesting, remember not to say anything without a lawyer. Whatever you choose to do, be wise, be safe, and act with measured purpose toward real solutions. And don't forget to Yang Daily.